Hello there, my name is Anna Nichenko, and now we will unveil the top news of recent days. Ukraine is preparing for a new law for mobilization. Starting next year, the rules will change. What exactly the rules will be, currently the government and society are discussing. But one thing is clear, the number of our soldiers is not unlimited. Therefore, it is now necessary to change the laws regarding the protection of our country. Every day we lose our soldiers, and it's very grievous when it happens due to lack of ammunition or old military equipment or artillery, or because of the superiority of the Russians in the air. All this leads to losses, and that is why our leadership and Ukrainian society insist so much on the supply of Western weapons. Every delivered armored personnel carrier, tank, fire system or aircraft is dozens and maybe even hundreds or thousands of saved lives. Mobilization in Ukraine will continue because the defense forces need a sufficient number of personnel to repel the enemy. Defending the country is an honorary duty of every citizen of Ukraine. The situation at the front is dynamic, so we must be preparing in case of its aggravation. The Russian-Ukrainian war should be viewed in a broad perspective rather than focusing on its individual episodes. The Ukrainian command has analyzed the military campaign of 2023 and is making efforts to achieve better results next year.
My main mistake was that I thought that the number of losses we caused would stop anyone. Such a number of losses would stop any country, but not the Russian Federation. On the front line, there are now mountains of enemy bodies that no one is trying to take away. More and more of them are appearing. Unfortunately, this is the attitude of the Russian Federation to its own people. And today it is difficult to predict how many more casualties need to be inflicted in order for all this to stop. This must be done until the war is over.
And finally, I want to say, let's win this war as soon as possible, because you don't know what it is like when your relatives or loved ones are at the front. These are daily experiences and sleepless nights. And on these Christmas holidays, I wish you not to find out about this. But if the world doesn't stop the Kremlin's evil now, then the war will spread to the territory of Eastern Europe, then the whole Europe, and then possibly the whole world. Let's not allow this. The Russian army struck the railway station where people had gathered for an evacuation flight. Again, it was in April last year in Kramatorsk. It was done now in Kherson. Last evening, about 140 civilians were waiting for the departure of the evacuation train at the railway station. At this time, the enemy began a massive shelling of the city. The station workers and policemen urgently began evacuating people. All the civilians managed to get to safe places. 2 civilians who received shrapnel wounds are being treated. But a police lieutenant died as the result of this shelling. He served in Kherson as part of a combined command. He was wounded during the evacuation of people. 2 more policemen are in the hospital with shrapnel wounds.
The enemy fired 90 shells at the city of Kherson. The Russian military targeted the residential quarters, infrastructure objects, enterprises, a shopping center, a railway station in Kherson, and an educational institution in the Kherson district. As a result of Russian aggression, 3 people died, 16 were injured. Alexander Prokudin, head of the Kherson Regional Military Administration, on Telegram.
The Russians don't care where to aim their missiles, at military, infrastructural or possibly critical targets, but they especially like to hit places where civilians gather. This is what they did now in Kherson. This is what they did in Kramatorsk on April 8, 2022, when 61 persons died. This is what they do with residential buildings and shopping centers, which are already hard to count. Dictator Lukashenko said that Russia's nuclear weapons were already on the territory of Belarus. We are hearing this talk of nuclear weapons again. Maybe enough? After all, if you play with the grenade for a long time, it will certainly eventually explode. And if you play with nuclear weapons for a long time, the consequences are hard to imagine. Although we Ukrainians know that nothing good will happen, Chernobyl taught us, and it should have taught the same thing to the Belarusians. But they have their own story. One blow, he said, could kill 1 million people. And I want to say that statements about nuclear strikes are irresponsible and dangerous and undermine the foundations of global security. Lukashenko is not an independent figure, but is controlled by the Kremlin, which actually controls its nuclear arsenal. Another nuclear blackmail is a manifestation of powerlessness and fear of criminal regimes in Minsk and Moscow. Thus, with disinformation about the transfer of nuclear weapons to Belarus, Moscow raises the stakes in its nuclear blackmail, contrasting its alleged prudence and commitment to international obligations with the inadequacy of the Belarusian dictator. Moscow is flagrantly violating its international obligations on the non-use and non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. And this statement is not only about Belarus. Russia is capable of assisting North Korea's nuclear and intercontinental ballistic missile programs that can deliver a nuclear warhead to the U.S. mainland. As South Korean intelligence reported, Pyongyang delivered 1 million artillery shells for the Kremlin, and no one knows what was the price. Maybe it was some nuclear engineering solution or maybe nuclear fuel. By the way, another Russian partner, Iran, already has enough uranium enriched to up to 60%, if enriched further to make 3 nuclear bombs, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency's theoretical definition and more at lower enrichment levels. So only the denuclearization of Russia can guarantee global nuclear security. That concludes today's video. Thank you for watching. Stay updated, comment, like and subscribe to our UATV English channel for more news from Ukraine. Your support really matters. Goodbye.